Hi, Neha. We'll go through this. Alright, finally figured it out. I must have been making some mistakes yesterday and we weren't carrying it all the way through. Alright, so we're looking for equation of the tangent curve. Okay, and that's kind of misleading because in this case it's going to be a line. Okay, so we're looking for the equation of a line. Alright, so the first thing we have is y equals secant of x. In order to find a tangent, we take the derivative. Okay, that's just the definition of a derivative. It gives you the slope of the tangent line. So the first thing we're going to do is come up with our slope. Y prime equals, alright, the derivative of secant of x is just secant x tangent x. Okay, so now I'm going to look at this at two different points. My first point is 7 pi over 4. So to get my slope of this line, I'm going to plug in 7 pi over 4. So y prime of 7 pi over 4 is going to be the secant of 7 pi over 4 times the tangent of 7 pi over 4. So I don't know if I was using the wrong numbers or if I was doing that wrong. All right, we can move to our sheet. Secant's 1 over cosine. Cosine is the x-coordinate, so I'm going to look at 7 pi over 4. And the x-coordinate is square root 2 over 2, but now it's 1 over that because secant is 1 over cosine. And now if I look at tangent, which is sine over cosine, or y over x, is just going to be -1 because anything over itself is -1. So we ended up with square root 2 over 2 over square root 2 over 2 negative, so that's going to be a -1. Alright, so this turns into 2 over square root 2 times -1. Okay, or a -2 over square root 2. And now we don't like to leave our radicals in the bottom, and this is going to simplify it greatly if we take that and get rid of our radical by multiplying by square root 2, top and bottom. I get -2 square root 2. A radical times itself, if it's square root, is just that number, so it's 2. 2's would cancel, so my slope is going to be minus square root 2. Alright, so now I know the slope of that tangent line is negative square root 2. But now it asks me for the equation. So now I have to go to an equation of a line. If I use point slope, and this is the equation of a line, in the point slope, it's y minus y1 equals my slope, x minus x1. Okay, and now I know most of this stuff I can fill in. Alright, so for example, I know my slope now is minus square root 2. Alright, the y stays y and the x stays x. I need to figure out what x1, y1 is going to be. I know my x because it gave it to me here, 7 pi over 4. So that's going to be x minus 7 pi over 4. How do I determine my y? Well, I determine my y by plugging my x in. Go back up here. Y equals secant of x. So y is going to equal my secant of 7 pi over 4. And now we've already done that over here. 7 pi over 4 was 2 over square root 2, or that would just simplify to the number 2. So this is going to be the number 2. Okay? In other words, this is 1 over square root 2 over 2, 2 over square root 2, multiply the top and bottom by square root 2, and I end up with just plain old 2. So now here is my equation, and I'm ready to isolate y. Okay, this is an equation of a line, but typically we isolate the y. So, oh, this is square root 2. Sorry. Sorry about that. That is equal to square root 2. Okay, so I'm going to add square root 2 each side, and I'm going to expand this out. Okay, so my final equation ends up being y equal to, God, I'm making all kinds of mistakes, equal sign there, minus square root 2x, then I'm going to multiply a negative square root, so this becomes positive 7 pi 4 times square root 2. That's just a number, but I'm going to leave it like that, and then I'm going to add the square root 2. And now I'm just going to leave it like this, even though I could combine those numerically and make a decimal or whatever. Okay, so that is the equation of my first line. Now let's look at the equation of the second line. I'm going to do the same exact procedure, but this time I'm going to use x equals 9 pi over 4. Okay, so again, we know that y equals the secant of x, y prime equals secant x, tangent x. What did we do first? We found the slope And now we're dealing with 9 pi over 4. Well, this will give me the slope of my tangent line if I plug in 9 pi over 4. So I get secant 9 pi over 4 times tangent 9 pi over 4. And again, I'm going back to my unit circle to figure that out. Well, 9 pi over 4, 4 goes into 9 too, so that brings me to 2 pi, and that would leave a pi over 4 left over. So I'm up here at pi over 4. I see that, again, this is 1 over cosine. Okay, cosine is the x-coordinate, so it's going to be 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. Or I can write that 2 over square root 2. Okay, and now if I look at the tangent, which is just y over x, that's just going to give me 1. So in this case, I end up with 2 over square root 2. But again, I'm going to get rid of that radical in the denominator. Square root 2 times square root 2 gives me 2. I have 2 square root 2 in the numerator. The 2's cancel, and my slope in this case is square root 2. So now I know my slope. Going back to my equation of a line, y minus y1 equals slope x minus x1. What can I plug in? I know my slope is square root 2. I know x, and I know my x1 is 9 pi over 4. Okay, and now y minus y1, I got to figure out what y1 is. Again, I'm going to go back here, the secant of 9 pi over 4, because I'm going back to my original equation to get y right here. But again, we've already done that. We ended up with square root 2, so we can just plug in square root 2. Okay. Again, simplifying like I did before, I want to distribute this square root 2 out, and I'm going to add square root 2 each side. And my final equation is y equals square root 2x, square root times x, square root 2x, square root 2 minus 9 pi over 4, square root 2. Okay, again, that's just a number. And then I'm going to add square root 2 on the end, moving that over. And now the last part of this was to graph all this, and I'm just going to do it in GeoGebra. Okay. Alright, so let's make our font size bigger. And let's get, first of all, let's get the f of x. Now notice that in the original instructions, it said to graph it, okay, for in the range of 5 pi over 4 to 5 pi over 2. Alright, so I'm going to use the if statement for that. F of x equals if, alright, if x is between 5 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 2, then my function is going to be up, and it doesn't do secant, so you have to do 1 divided by cosine of x. Okay? Again, it won't graph secant, so you use 1 over cosine x, and it gives me a graph. Okay? And mainly I'm interested in this part right here. Next, it wants me to graph those two lines we generated. So the first one I'm going to use is g of x. And this is just a labor of typing in these long equations. The first equation we came up with was minus square root of 2. And the square root we do is SQRT, open parentheses, put in your number 2, x, plus, and now I'm going to have my 7 pi. Pi is pi divided by 4, square root 2, and then I'm just going to add square root 2. Alright, and notice that's a tangent line, and if you had to find the point of intersection, it would intersect with this graph at that 7 pi over 4 spot, which is approximately right there. And now let's enter our second one. Again, we're going to name this one different so it doesn't type over. H of x equals square root of 2. Again, that was our slope, square root 2x. Okay, again, square root is SQRT. We had minus 9 pi divided by 4, and then we can multiply that by square root of 2. And then we had plus square root of 2. Okay, hit enter, and now that's the tangent line going that way. And now it didn't ask us to graph it all the way out, but I'm just doing that for simplicity. Alright, I hope this helps. If you need additional help, please just let me know.